Peace and blessings, royal family. You know, it's a lot going on. I got a lot to talk about. You know, for the record, we still in the belly of the beast, you know? I'm still in the sheath until I see him leave. But I caught him, though. Let me tell you, I caught him. You know, this goes into a deeper story. And I guess I could start here, but it's going to probably be a while before we cover everything from Enter the Beast. This is all in that sheath, but you know, I wind up now started being led to certain information, especially in reference to the indigenous people, which is really who the Black Horseman is here on that behalf to, you know, free the souls that's trapped and to let them get their redemption. Well, anyways, information has to be dug up about what happened in the past. And some of this information now, you know, somehow led me to colonization. Colonization is the key to everything. You know, just the term alone says a lot. You know, why do you have to colonize something? Or what is the process of colonizing, you know? Well, you're looking at something where you're looking at people that actually go to another person's home, take them out their home, and pretend to be their new husband and actually give them kids. And these kids now is a mixed breed, and this mixed breed of kids now becomes the one that's colonized, populating the area over. With this now being populated over, they give them a new religion. Excuse me. You could say they become domesticated. Well, there's two parts to this domestication, which is the mixing of the blood. The mixing of the blood is the important part. You know, we today now don't know what's the outcome of the mixing of the blood. It's sterility. The sterility rate of the Western world, Australia, New Guinea, all those is where the most actual failure took place in their colonization. And if we understand those parts, you'll understand more what's going on. So, on that note, let me see if I can help you out. This colonization we're talking about, it started a long time ago. You know, this was a plan that everybody wanted to carry out. You could look at the people from the Caucasus Mountains started coming out as these nomads, these actual barbarians. And when I say barbarians, that was what they had over the other people. They was in their second brain, really, not their higher neocortex self. And they saw the indigenous people as savages, so they saw them in their reptilian brain. So this is where our problems start. Them now as the barbarians saying that they're going to come and do this thing called eugenics. You could Google eugenics. It's actually the purification of the earth, getting rid of the bad blood, as what they call it. The degenerates, the lowlifes, the robbers, the stealers, the fornicators. Would you believe this? This group of people believe that they could actually just get rid of and kill and exterminate people for doing wrong. You know, wrong is through whoever the perceiver eyes is. He's judging. But anyways, so now these people start going out and they got funding as far as in the sense of Wall Street type funding. You have organizations that put together just to do research first. And their job was to go all over the world on boats and gather plants and different artifacts. But then it wasn't that slavery at first. This was part of this colonization, which they was coming into resistance because every land they try to occupy was already preoccupied. So you got now a force of Marines that's rolling with them, some wild pirates rolling with them. Their way of actually taking stuff or confiscating the land was to build up a trade relationship with the indigenous people first. Come in there as if to trade with them different furs for corn and this for that. this how it starts first. But at the same time, the people who's trading established themselves a home there. After they back down militarily, the warriors and the tribesmen that defending that land or befriend them, then that's when they start the colonization. The colonization is actually the mixing of the blood. They take their actual selves and have sex with the indigenous people, which give them mulatto children. These mulatto mixes now wind up being populating more mulatto mixed with more mulatto mixed with more mulatto. Everybody want to have sex with the mulatto. And so now you getting off branches of the indigenous people being created, with the mulattoes favoring the Europeans more because that's who their parents is. Now, when they make these indigenous mixes with the European, you get off branches of the black race. So now, this is during the time when, you could say this is the 1600s, the early 1500s. Slavery didn't really start yet. Slavery didn't start like till the 1700s. You understand? So for the first 200 years, all they was doing was mixing with the indigenous people and bringing black people that was already indigenous to America into different states to colonize states. Each state is colonized by a different country. It's not like the United States is one group of people that belong to the United States. No. New Jersey belongs to somebody. New York belongs to somebody. North Carolina belongs to somebody. South Carolina belongs to somebody. Louisiana belongs to somebody. New Orleans, everywhere is owned by different countries. They're all under one conglomerate as like, I think like the West Indies Corporation or the African Pan Corporation. These are the owners of the United States, but it's in parts because you had a war between the Spaniards, Spain, Portugal, the French, and the English. You could catch a lot of it. It took place mostly with the French because the French is a mixed group of Mexican people that actually migrated over to France, Paris, wherever you call it, and established with Louis the Fifth or whatever. They snuck themselves in there because one of them, I think the first Louis, never left no will or something. It's a funny story how they got into power, but they're actually Mexicans that for some reason didn't have fecundity or whatever. That means like they was able to populate, because most mulatto mixes, from what they're saying, it don't procreate after 3 generations. 3 generations, sterility take place. So a lot of people, a lot of men who's either white, mixed, whatever it may be, sterility take place. That's normal occurrence if you leave your geographical location and move to another location. So Africans moved from Africa to America, they're going to have sterility problems. So all of them really died off a long time ago. Only the mixes survived, the hybrids. So even if you're in Africa, all the Africans died a long time ago. Only thing that's there is the hybrid. And we talking the whole continent of Africa has been colonized. There's not one free continent, one free colony that wasn't, and I think it was, and that was Iberia. Iberia was supposed to be free, but Iberia belonged to North Carolina. They was taking the people, no, as a matter of fact, Louisiana it belonged to. And it's taking the people from Louisiana, or people who was in the actual United States who's not African, who's African American, and sending them back into Africa and Iberia. And so it was always a republic. It always was a place that defended itself, but it was not part of Africa, and it was not Africans there. It was Americans there. You understand? Iberia is just all American people. So you got to understand, when you see them as some great place, it's not because they was great in the sense of their cultivating and being an indigenous group. There was a mixed group of people from the beginning. So was the Berbers, so was the whole Ottoman Empire, so was the Moors, all mixed people. Now, this is where it gets funny at. When slaves started coming, which was in the 1700s, when they found out that that's a big business, it was done once a year with some companies, but you had people that was doing it more than once a year. It was kept going with it, especially people like I said, the French, like they actually first was created in South America. That's why they own all of Louisiana, New Mexico, all of those places that's French-owned territories. It was actually from them colonizing, coming from France, keep sending backup people as far as women to have sex with their men, but they was mixing with the Indians. So that's why you have a lot of beautiful people that come out of them Creole places. Creole itself is just mean mixed. It's the mestizos people. Those is all still white people more than they are blacks. The Africans didn't come until 17 something, but before that, it was a genetic game they was playing where they was taking all the people from South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, New Orleans, Louisiana. They populated the Caribbean. They mixed them, put them in the Caribbean, not as slaves. It's just part of a genetic program that they're doing, sending them back and forth. All the people who was occupying now North Carolina, Louisiana, South Carolina that was black came from Jamaica, came from Cuba, came from Dominican Republic. They actually was importing their own slaves from the islands. It wasn't actually from the Carolinas, I mean from Africa yet. But these people was mixed. They actually, like I said, took the seed, impregnated it, and made up these new races. So that's why you have so many mixed races in the United States. Now the thing to it, when France started getting into all of this now, they did a different thing. Being that they was mixed with the Mexicans and they was half Indian, they actually was able to unite with the Indians. And so they was able to establish themselves not more as like, slave master and they're the master and the Indians or the indigenous people as a slave. They was actually siding with freeing the slaves or freeing the Indians and giving them their right to bear arms and all that stuff, just so that the English won't take over that side of town. So it was like the blacks, the Indians was warring against England over on that. They was the rebels, the warriors. That's why you see a lot of Haitians is involved with Louisiana. This is due to the fact it's all French owned and it's a mix. Believe it or not, as black as Haitians is, as dark as they are, they're more white than they are black. They're not part of the Negro race because they come from actually the indigenous people of the United States mixing with the European. And then they sent them back to Haiti. Haiti itself was under Spain rule at that time when it divided. That's when you see half a Dominican Republic and half is Haiti. At one time it was all Hispaniola. And the ones from the Haiti now intermixed with the Africans. That's why that side became black, while the Spaniard side or Dominican Republic only mixed with the Spain, because Spain could only go to that side of the island, while whoever was the running the other part, which by then they already made these people that was low in intelligence or whatever, but reptilian higher beings that knew how to use their spiritual abilities, but they stood in their reptilian being, so they was rebellious. They called them the mongrels, or just people who's not going to listen to authority, and they wound up taking over the island. Same thing happened in Jamaica. The nice people that they made so educated, when put under pressure, flipped and took over the whole island. So they was creating like the ship from Dr. Meru with these hybrids. Everybody was caught up in it. And that's what they were only putting in the United States. The same thing was going on in France, where they was deporting anybody for crime. If you was caught lying, you would get deported. If you stole, fornicated, it was like around 7,000 people got deported from France into Louisiana, the North Carolina, all over. And so these states is fighting amongst them, because Louisiana is owned by the French, but the Carolinas is owned by the English. And you got people coming down from France to Louisiana to start a new life against their will. No food. Indians are scalping their heads, and they just have to stay there till, I guess, the war is over and France win. That never happened though. Eventually the English took over everything. But at the time, that's where you get all these weird mixing that all these different races come from. Plus, you got to realize everybody in the United States was criminals. It was only criminals that was put in the United States. No matter what state it was, everybody in their country put out a deportation hearing to get people to leave their country. So if you committed any type of crime, they had ICE back then that went around and went and took you. If you even spit wrong, you was being deported out of the country. And so that's where most of the people that populated the United States, that is of white ancestry, European ancestry, got there. They was all deportees, or they was actually sent there against their will. Nobody really volunteered to go to the United States. It wasn't like how they're trying to tell you. That's the real truth that's going on. And the blacks was fighting with the Indians against the English, and the French sided with, they fought. Now, don't get me wrong, they killed off a lot of Indians. They killed off a lot of slaves. But it was the French supporting the Indians more than the English was against. And so I just wanted to put you all on to what was going on as far as how the real colonization took place. Because we're the product of these little beginning mixes that eventually, for us to stay procreating or have more kids, we have to remix back either to the pure Negro or the pure white person. That one will not give you the ability not to be sterile, but if you go and mix with a mix, that makes you sterile. What's mixes? Like 2 Spanish people, 2 Chinese people, 2 that's not black and white people is a mix. You understand? A hybrid. Different hybrid renders different things. Some of them come out good, some of them come out with autism, some of them come out with brain death, all sickle cell, all of those is a combination of bad mixes. You understand? You have to stay with the root race for you to cut back to yourself now. Even if you don't have the person that is actually a root race person now, you have to follow root race cultures. Either you follow, I don't know, white people don't have no culture, no disrespect or anything like that, but you don't. I already looked into your ancient hieroglyphs and artifacts. There's nothing there more than vases and clay pots. You can't tell nothing. But everybody worship one thing. So you got to get back to your original Negro culture and follow it, and you will have your genetics through epigenetics healing right, doing what it's supposed to do. Be out in nature. Nature is where we're from, no matter what planet, or what continent you say you're from. So get yourself into nature. So now we know that a lot of these places was pre-populated already by mixed blacks that's half Indian and half black. You could say that would be popular in America, and more than you would say Africans and Negroes, which was being studied, and a lot of them, is not here today. That gene is gone. I can't say I could see anybody who have it. If you even go and look on Google, what's the genetics of a black person, an African American, that's what they're going to tell you. If you got some type of Caucasian. And if we don't know these facts, how could we actually be worrying about white, black, and don't know our own truth? We in denial. Knowing this is the truth first, and then we could seek a different way, knowing that what we know is the truth and not a lie. Now, on that note, let me say this then. What we call African American or black don't come from the genes of like the Negro or the Egyptians or anything. It's come from the Ethiopian. The Ethiopian line rendered black. The word black didn't come into talk until the Ethiopians, who was already preoccupying America long before the slavery came. They was already in the Carolinas, and they have books that tell you that Ethiopians is a diplomatic society that had a governmental system, and they started the UN. They're one of the key first persons that participated and started the UN at that. And then on top of it, you got to realize they're the ones that all religion come from. Ethiopia is the bloodline of King Solomon. You see, I follow King Solomon, and I'm from King Solomon bloodline. So it's like these things you have to know if you're actually a higher being. You hear me rep the Hat Man. The Hat Man is King Solomon. That's his soul, his spirit. So you got to realize why Ethiopians as high aristocrats and not seen as just regular. They themselves rendered the Asiatics and the Indo-Europeans themselves because of their, you know, diverse genetics, you could say. You know, and so all of us really came from that stock. The Ethiopian stock would render black people. That's why they call them black people. But then you see, you have, if you look it up in the dictionary, you have Negroes, you have Negritos, you have Kafars, you have Hottentotten, you have Etruscans, you have Bushmen, you have so many different groups. Now these is like races, hereditary races I'm talking about, not tribes. That's something different. You understand? Tribes is within those different hereditaries. But you could look, there's a group called the Kafars, which is, the Zulu nation is Kafar. You got the Hottentottens. These people is light-skinned, like a motherfucker, pale black people. And so is the Etruscans, pale black people. These is mixed. Let me tell you, the more you go back to like the Pygmies and Bushmen, you're gonna get more of the Four Horsemen story and people with hats on. Like you see Olmecs with hats on. You gotta realize we're in the Sahara Desert. We only wore hats. We was cowboys. We raised cattle. We took care of cattle way before it came to the United States. And we was traveling to the United States long before the Oriental people occupied it, which was way before Christopher Columbus. So we already had ties to the Grand Canyon and a whole bunch of other places in Nevada, Louisiana, and I'm going to prove all of those to you soon. You know, I'm going to cut this short because I'm getting into public view. University of Conscious Science. One love.